Okay, so in the next 20 minutes or so, I just want to give you a sort of a brief outline of my own journey to, from Eritrea to the UK, and then from university to work. So just to give you an insight of I suppose a lot of people's journeys as refugees and migrants and so forth. So I've called it Journey to University and Beyond, and I think the initial presentation that you've just seen really set the scene for from school and then to university life. So I want to just come in there to hopefully set the scene beyond university as well, and the kind of things that you might wish to go into. So currently my academic qualifications are in ancient history, in the ancient world of Greeks and Romans, and the cultures that influenced them. So I do a lot of talks and at conferences and so forth, talking about the thing that I specialize in, which I'll come into in a bit. And then the thing that pays the bills is my work at the University of Oxford, which is the Public Engagement Manager, and that means working in one of the most renowned library, or shall I say a collection of libraries, which are 28 libraries altogether in the University of Oxford, called the Bodleian Libraries. And I manage the program, which is linking the university to the general public and managing the exchanges between the public and the university. So there is a deeper understanding of what happens behind the closed doors at the university like Oxford, but the type of research that carries on, but also working with communities and schools and the general public to inform our own research as well. So I manage a group of members of staff, and I work with researchers, I work with curators and a variety of administrative staff across the university. Okay, so there's my email address. So after this talk, if you want to get in touch with me, there's my work email address, and I think everyone's got my Gmail address by now, Farhana. And also I'm on social media, on Twitter, so you can drop me a message via the direct message, or you could just tweet at me if that's appropriate. Okay, so today's presentation, basically I'm just going to cover, sorry, I'm just going to move the header because unfortunately it's right at the top where I can't see what I'm saying. So this is pretty much my life in 9 boxes. I was born in Eritrea makes me about 40, and so I was born during the latter half of the Eritrean Ethiopian Civil War, and then some members of my family fled to Sudan, which is the go-to, where it sort of deals with refugees, a lot from Eritrea and Ethiopia. In 1986, I was really young, so I was 5 years old. My mother has already left by then to work in Saudi Arabia, and then I went to live in Sudan with my aunt, and then I arrived in the UK to London in 1989. So I was 8 years old, and I came with Arabic and Tigrinya, only a smattering of Amharic, because I've only went to Ethiopia once when I was a baby, so I apologize for not speaking Amharic. So I lived in London until I was 18, and then I went to university in Swansea, which is in Wales, in 99, and I took up a subject which a lot of Ethiopian Eritrean families would not understand what it was. When I was in school and college, I was encouraged to take up professional degrees, so things like medicine and law and accountancy, the things that gets you a proper job. But whilst I was in college, I took 3 A-levels, English literature, history, and government and politics. So I was very much drawn to the humanities, particularly history. And I did a smattering of Egyptology at primary school, maybe, and Roman Britain at secondary school. And then when I was in sixth form college in London, in Balham, I came across a text which was a fictional text, and I was really surprised to see my name, Maharit, in there as an Egyptian queen, you know, fictionalized. And so I was very, very intrigued by that aspect. And then I started doing quite a few extracurricular activities centered around ancient history. And then there was an opportunity just before I went to university at that time to study law, to go to Greece for a classical excursion trip with some of the sixth form students and some of the teachers. And I asked my mother if I can go, and I went. I spent 8 days going around Greece and looking at the archaeological sites, learning more about the Greco-Roman civilization and the cultures that influenced them. And then I just fell in love with that subject and came back, and I changed my degree course to classical civilization. Now, in the UK, the normal route to a classics education is normally you go to a very wealthy school, like a private school or a grammar school, and you take up Greek and Latin, particularly Latin when you're younger, and then you study the classics, the classical texts, so you know, Homer and Virgil and Cicero and Tacitus when you are in secondary school, and then in college, and then you automatically go to university to study classics. So this was really, really unusual route for me because I had no experience of the classical world. So when I went to university, I had to start from scratch to learn Greek, to learn Latin, and to learn about the ancient world. And so I took up classical civilization, which I'm just going to move this slide. Which is basically a study of the Greek and Roman worlds, ranging from the earliest Greek literary sources to the fall of the Roman Empire. So this is pretty much from 8th century BC to 4th century AD, so we're talking quite a few thousands of years here. And what was really nice about the classical civilization degree was that it was very interdisciplinary. So what this means is that it encompassed many different disciplines within one field. So you had the opportunity to do a bit of art and archaeology and literature and philosophy and language and politics and history, and it goes on, the list goes on. So this was an incredibly broad degree, but it had the depth as well. And so by the end, you could specialize in, you know, if you were a linguist, you can specialize in language, or you can specialize in international relations if you study the politics aspect, and so forth. So this was a really great degree to know about where I suppose the modern world has based a lot of its ideas on in politics and our society as a whole. Now, my specialism is really in looking at race and ethnicity in the ancient world. I do a lot of work on Persia, so ancient Iran and Iraq. I do quite a lot of work on East Africa, so the interactions between ancient Ethiopians and Nubians and with the Greek and Roman and Persian worlds. So it was actually at the university when I was reading an ancient text that I became interested in my own culture. So by that point, like many of us, we were, living in this kind of limbo transient world where you were outside the Eritrean Ethiopian community, and then outside the British communities, and so you were in this kind of tension between Habesha and being British, and sometimes for me that was quite a difficult balance. So I moved to Swansea when I was 18, which is as far away as you can get from the Habesha community. And immersed myself in the British culture, because I felt a bit more comfortable in that. However, when I began studying about the ancient world, I realized how important my culture and heritage and the history around East Africa contributed to what some people would call Western, and I use quotation marks, Western civilization. And actually, the cultures of East Africa contributed to the human civilization, but this doesn't get talked about in a lot of European universities. So when I started learning about the Greek and Romans, it was actually an opportunity to learn about my own cultural history. So that was intriguing, because then I came back to admire and accept my background. So that's a bit of a long-winded story of how I came to accept who I am. So then when I started, after I finished my PhD, I really started thinking about going into learning more about the East African contribution to the Greco-Roman world, and I went to visit Addis Ababa and Aksum in just before the pandemic, because I found out that my father was still alive. He fled during the war, so we were reunited when the Ethiopian Eritrean sort of peace agreement happened under Abiy Ahmed a couple of years ago. So I found out I had a whole other family in Ethiopia. So that's another story. But that's the impetus for me and my husband to go to Ethiopia, and I began to know the ancient history of Ethiopian Eritrea, particularly the interactions between the Greeks, Romans, and Persia, and the Aksumite civilization. So I do some of my work now on this, which is really, really interesting to get both of the, my life and the professional to marry together. So then that's me with the priest in Abba Garima monastery, which is one of the books that came out under a mentor of mine from University of Oxford. And then when I went to see the monastery, it was really, really special. So one of the projects that I was involved in when I was at the classics faculty and then the Bodleian Libraries was bringing and raising awareness about one of the most ancient texts, surviving texts, called the Garima Gospels. And they used to date it to the 11th century AD, but now through the University of Oxford's carbon dating, they dated it back to the 4th century AD. So really it kind of changed the narrative around the contribution of East African literary interpretation of the Bible, and sort of on European ideas. So now it kind of reversed it, it became less Eurocentric, and that was absolutely amazing to be part of that. And so I worked with a number of researchers to try and raise awareness about these really special manuscripts. And I then worked with a number of people from the Habesha community from London and Wales and Milton Keynes and various regions around the UK, and we celebrated an event in University of Oxford, and this is where I met the lovely Berhane, who invited me to give a talk today. So this is the reason why I'm here. He came to one of those events, and we established a really lovely friendship. And when I heard about what he was doing at the Eritrean Youth and Family Outreach, I felt like I needed to give something back. So this is why I'm here. So this is part of the project, and this is really nice of where you're bringing our own sort of cultural heritage to the wider general public, particularly in a place like Oxford University, where everybody knows Oxford, and so it was under a spotlight, and it raised awareness, not just about these manuscripts themselves, but about Ethiopia and Eritrea and ancient and modern history and politics. So this is just a few of the pictures that we had, and some of the ancient manuscripts are in my workplace, which a lot of Habesha people don't know about. So yes, and then this is some pictures of the one of the events that we had, and we had the Ethiopian Orthodox Church come in, because Ge'ez is still used in the services. I grew up listening to Ge'ez, not understanding it. But it was part and parcel, and now, funny enough, they teach Ge'ez in universities, so like University in Toronto and in Germany and so forth, as part of medieval studies, which is absolutely brilliant. So when we were interviewing quite a lot of the people who were involved, but also came to the events and the workshops and so forth, it was really, really nice to hear what they thought about these manuscripts and what they thought about the importance of Ethiopian and Eritrean culture, particularly in the UK and on a global context. So this is just the pinnacle of the success. I've been doing this project for 6 years, and I never know when it's going to end. It's always something always happens to move it to the next level. So then I began talking about this particular project at conferences and at universities, and doing lots of podcasts and lots of presentations, and on that one of the days, the Ethiopian ambassador to the UK came because he heard about the project, and that was even more of a raising awareness to not just within the Western community, but also in Ethiopia and Eritrea. Yes, so a lot of the things that I do, I try and balance between my I suppose my public engagement job and my academic job, which is really to talk a lot and give presentations, and my job has taken me to Harvard, which I never thought possible, to Princeton, to South Africa. I've been sort of giving papers at conferences, interviewed by newspapers, and radio programs and so forth. So my world has really changed from being a child refugee to now, sort of becoming a doctor in classics, and talking about not just about the Greeks and Romans, but really about my own history too. So just to kind of wrap up there, because I'm more than happy to take questions, and I also know that we're running a little bit late. What I would say to the next generation of the Eritrean youth is that I can completely understand. One strong thing that I would like to reinforce is the understand the pressure, the pressure to pursue perhaps a certain type of degree or a certain type of education, and I would say to you that I think you would be far happier if you chose what you want to do and pursue around that. I think the most important thing is to pick up transferable skills, and you can end up doing lots of different jobs. Like myself, I've ended up doing so many different types of jobs, whether it's in the charity sector or in the bank, or I've done so many different types of jobs just because of my degree qualification, a humanities qualification. And I suppose this brings me to talk about being open to new things. I had no idea that I would end up in Oxford. I didn't even know the sort of the world that revolved around Oxford University and Cambridge University. That was not my world. I thought that was for a particular group of people who were usually rich, white, and certainly a lot of the male, and to see so many, actually there are quite a few Eritreans and Ethiopians studying at Oxford University, and that fills me with great joy and pride. So to be open to new things, to gain new skills, and to move out of your comfort zone. I think that's one of the most profound skill that I have developed, is to constantly push myself outside my own comfort zone and to make connections, because you never know who's going to give you a job at the end of the day. To build networks, whether they are friends network or professional network, to just make those connections, and to travel and explore, to perhaps not be afraid to move away from the Habesha community, to go beyond that, to travel, to perhaps go to a university that is abroad, or maybe Scotland or Wales, and to be open to other cultures, to be receptive to new ideas, and to never be afraid to ask. So that's pretty much it. And this is my book, one of my books. So I'm promoting one of my books here, which I got an opportunity to do with Mary Beard, who is one of the most popular, famous classicists in the world at the moment, and I never thought that would be possible. So I hope that wasn't too swift, Berhane, but lots of food for thought, and more than happy to take questions afterwards.